Welcome, Walloway listeners. I want to give everyone a big thank you for joining our amazing podcast today. It's been a long time, and I'm very excited to bring you the show we have for you today. On the show, we got the one and only Coach Dee Lancaster, my co-host from the Junior NBA, and we got the former NBA All-Star Micheal Ray Richardson. Amazing show today. He averaged 14.8 points a game, 5.5 rebounds, 7 assists, and 2.6 steals. Mr. Richardson, Coach D, how you guys doing?
I'm doing well, doing well. Just so you know, trying to stay safe.
I'm doing good. Imran, I haven't seen you in a while. Sugar, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, man. How you doing?
All right. When me and Imran was talking, he wanted to get some insight on the Nets, and the first person I thought of was you because I was like, you're a former Net, and the thing that me and Imran was talking about was a lot of these players today, they need to look at a player like you, a player like Bernard King, a player like Bird and them, because without you guys, they wouldn't be who they are today. And I think that's a big deal for who these players are today.
Yeah, but it's I think it's a different game now. It's a much more of a scoring game than like a defensive game. Because back when I played, we was using our big man down low. But now the 5 and the 4s, they step out and shoot threes.
Yeah.
So it's a whole different game. I mean, it's a different game and a whole lot of money.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because when I was growing up, when coaches that I played for, they wanted bigs. Yeah. You got to get a big first, then you build around it.
Yes. Yes. I mean, that's how to be. Even for me now, when I was coaching in the minor leagues, I always made sure I had a real good big man because for like me to win a championship, the game is won inside out, not outside in.
Okay, absolutely, I agree. I agree.
And for everyone who's attending right now, from the new generation, from people who were born in the 80s and afterwards, have a little highlight clip showing some of Sugar's moves. So let's take a look at this real quick 30-second highlight of Sugar in his prime.
Okay.
That was a bad boy.
He was.
A bad boy.
We saw 1 second of the clip. You put the moves on Larry Bird. We saw driving to the basket, stopping on the dime, pulling up for the shot. We saw some reverses. We saw some up and unders. We saw some steals leading to the transition and fast break. I saw Magic Johnson. I was watching the clip earlier. Magic Johnson, basically, he was saying, like, Sugar was like me. And talking about how exciting it was to have someone in the league like you. So I hope that brought back some good memories.
Oh yeah, it brought back a lot of good memories. When you sit there and you look at that flashback, how things have really changed. And then now it's like a 3-point lead. Like when I played, if we shot maybe 1 or 2 threes, that was a whole lot of threes. Now these guys are shooting 30 and 43 a game. It's just unbelievable. Mm-hmm. And then you have guys shooting threes that shouldn't even be shooting threes. And that's the problem, really.
Yeah.
What's interesting is, like, even though I'm from the new school, I really like the old school type of players. And Coach D knows this. I'm a big San Antonio Spurs fan. Tim Duncan is like my favorite player, and then Manu Ginobili. I'm born from Chicago, so of course I'm a Jordan, Pippen, Rodman, Tony Kukoc guy. But what I see is sometimes when people compare the old school players to the new school, and they'll look at just the numbers and they'll say, but the new school guys are scoring more, right? And I'll say, like you said right now, you guys didn't shoot as many threes. And if you practice taking more threes, and that was part of the game, your point averages would have been much higher, just like I feel like they are now. So
Yeah, but if you really look at these here guys who's averaging all these here points, they're really not shooting a high percentage.
Mm-hmm.
They're shooting, in like the high 30s or the early 40s. Back when we played, we had guys shooting like 49, 52% for their careers. I don't think there's a guy in the league today that's shooting over 50%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. And one thing I admired about Sugar when I was young, nowadays in the NBA, it's all about the names. So when the players play, let's use Steph. The players who play against Steph, if he shoots a three in your face or shoots a three, the player today says, okay, because that's Steph. Sugar wasn't like that.
No.
He stepped between those lines. He didn't care what name he was playing against.
No, I mean that's why I say it's a different game now. Because it's like a buddy thing here. When I stepped on the floor, it was for me. It was just I was trying to take advantage of you. I mean, I don't care who you was. I was out there to try to do you. You know what I mean?
And that's the difference with Sugar and the players back in the days than the players now. Like, they'll say, well, Steph is one of the greatest shooters, so he expected to have 30. No. When Sugar would play against somebody like Bird, he'd take it to Bird. He wouldn't just say because Bird's a great player that he's supposed to do that. Sugar would want to get him.
Well, but we was trying, back in the day, we had like a lot of guys who could score points who you never hear about. Like George Gervin is one of the best scorers of whoever played the game, and you never hear about him because he never shot a lot of threes. But I remember like one year when I played against him and he was going for the scoring title. He had 35 points in the first quarter and didn't even sweat. He played 3 quarters and scored 71 points. Didn't even play the fourth quarter. I mean, it was unbelievable.
what was his nickname against guys? George Gervin.
Iceman.
And then we got. What about this picture over here?
That's the Sugar Man.
That's the Sugar Man. It's funny you bring that up because when we were kids, my cousin Jamal and I, he was Iceman and I was Dr. J, right? But that Iceman poster was probably the most famous poster. But let me tell you something. That Sugar poster right there was just as famous.
Oh yeah.
Everybody had that in the barbershops, in boys' rooms.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a bad one right there.
But everybody wanted that poster with Sugar, just like the George Gervin one.
Yeah.
So now I think why don't we transition to the topic at hand in terms of discussing this trade of James Harden going to the Brooklyn Nets, and obviously Sugar is a former Net, and Coach D, you're from New York, so this is very close to home in terms of how this is going to affect the Brooklyn Nets and how this shakes up the East. So I guess my first question to both of you is, overall, what do you guys think about the trade? And do you think that there's enough basketball to go around? And Sugar, we'll start with you, and then Coach D, you can follow.
Well,
okay.
I mean, I think it's a great trade because, this is a different era. Like back when we played, we didn't want to go and be with all superstars. What we wanted to do is we wanted to do our own thing. But in this, era, guys are like, teaming up to try to win a championship. And I think it's great for the Brooklyn Nets.
And Coach D, what do you say?
I mean, come on. Whenever you're able to have 3 superstars play on the same team, you have to make that trade. Like Sugar said, when I was growing up, you didn't want to see Bird, Doc, and Magic play on the same team. You wanted to see them battle each other. But in this new era now, players are teaming up to get those victories. And I think as far as the Nets concerned, they should take a page out of like Kevin Durant's philosophy, because when he went to Golden State, they were 3 superstars and they learned how to play together. Kyrie played with LeBron, but it was just them 2. But I think that Kyrie and James Harden both need the ball, and KD can play with anybody in the world, so I'm not worried about him. But I think that it's a sacrifice for mainly James Harden and Kyrie because they have to have the ball at all times.
Well, I think it's going to be a sacrifice for like all of them because normally is when you used to being the man on one team and then you have to go and you got like another two guys. Well, like all of you guys going to have to make a sacrifice.
Yeah.
And I think I think all three of those guys now are at an age now where they got like one goal and that's to win a championship. So they know if they want to get there, they all gonna have to make a sacrifice, and I think they will.
So let's focus in on that a little bit in terms of, I think Coach Lee, you alluded to it, that KD is probably the guy who is going to be willing to make the most sacrifice. I think KD is also their best weapon. Let's just be honest, 7-footer.
Without a doubt.
Who can do what he does, right? And I think James Harden is hungry because he's the only one that doesn't have a chip out of the three.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, James Harden, ball dominant, and he's a guy who likes eating up the shot clock, even though under Mike D'Antoni it was like 7 seconds or less. And Kyrie Irving, more than he's a point guard, he's like a shooting guard in a point guard's body where he's like instant offense. He can cook guys. So is this something where James Harden, you think, is going to be the facilitator and he's going to go back into dishing out those assists to KD and Kyrie? Or how do you think it'll work in regards to that?
Well, I think that they'll use Kyrie as the facilitator. He'll bring the ball up the floor and he'll pass the ball because all three of those guys can score whenever they get ready. So that's not going to be a problem. And I think what he's going to do is, and I know Mike D'Antoni because I played against him in Italy, so I know just like what kind of guy he is. And he's a offensive mind guy. He's a genius because he know how to score points. He know how to put guys in situations where they can really, really show their talent.
I think that you remember when they put James Harden at the point in Houston?
Yeah, he was averaging a lot of,
and they were successful.
Yep.
I think from that standpoint, they should let James Harden be the facilitator because he's so ball dominant, and that'll program him to say, "Don't forget, we have Kyrie and KD on this team." So I think that I mean, of course, Kyrie's a natural point guard, and Kyrie can play 2 or 1. Mm-hmm. But I think from a James Harden standpoint, the 2 guard is what? A shooting guard.
Yes.
So I think if they put James Harden at the 1, he'll be programmed to facilitate. And if he got to go, he got to go. You know what I'm saying? Meaning go to the basket and get a bucket.
Well, I think what's going to probably happen is since those other 2 guys have already been there, Durant and Kyrie, I think James is going to have to come and he's going to have to fit in.
A good point. Okay.
And so I think, he'll come in and he'll sit back and watch for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And then he'll be able to open up and do his stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is, like you mentioned, Mike D'Antoni, who was a former coach of James Harden and the former coach of Steve Nash, when Steve Nash, who's the current coach, won 2 MVPs back-to-back, right? Mm-hmm. So you got 2 proteges. The coach and one of the star players is a protege of Mike D'Antoni. And Steve Nash is an interesting fellow because not the most athletic, not the tallest, not the strongest.
Right.
But what was he good at? He made everyone around him much better, right? So I think if someone can get in the mind of his shooting guard and his point guard and make them understand what it takes to be the next level leader and make those around you better, it's going to be Steve Nash. And let's not forget that Kevin Durant and Steve Nash worked together in Golden State when Steve Nash was like a specialist for the team. So I think that it's the coaching situation is going to work out. And I believe they still have Harris on the team. Is that right, Coach D? Is Harris?
Yes, they do. They still have Joe Harris.
Okay. So they still got some firepower on that team. Anything else that sticks out to you guys in terms of maybe lack of depth? Like in today's NBA, it requiring, like, you need 3 stars. Like that's almost mandatory to win a championship. But now they kind of sent out a lot of other pieces to other teams. So what do you think in terms of the depth that they have and any potential injuries that might come up? Like,
yeah, but when you got those 3 guys who can put the ball in the basket, you really don't need a lot of depth.
Yes.
Because each of those guys, if they wanted to, they could average 30 up to 35 easy. Easy. You know what I mean? So I don't think that depth is going to be a problem. Really, I don't really see any problems.
Coach D?
I think they lost a lot with their bench, but don't forget they still have Spencer Dinwiddie, who's a terrific player. I don't know if he's going to come off the bench. He probably will now, which is damn near a starter to me.
Right.
But like Sugar said, with that firepower, the bench could be minimal, and they will succeed. You got to remember something: playoff games, 7-game series are about adjustments, and it's a slower game there. So in the playoffs, in 7 games, those 3 guys are going to adjust.
How do you think they match up against Philadelphia? They got Simmons, Embiid, Danny Green, Dwight Howard, Tobias Harris, and then Miami. Obviously, I don't think they're as talented, but they got the confidence of making it to the finals. And then you got the Milwaukee Bucks. So how do you see the playoffs playing out in terms of the different matchups?
Well, on like those teams that you just said, I don't think any of those teams have as much firepower as the Nets have. I mean, because if you look every year that the Milwaukee Bucks get there, they have the best record during the regular season, and they get in the playoffs and they be the first one out.
Yeah.
So with these guys, I mean, I think really right now on paper, I think the Brooklyn Nets is the team to beat in the East.
You mentioned Philly, Imran. Philly's got size, and when you have size, that slows the game down. So the Nets they're going to have to move fast. So if Philly plays the slow down game in a half court game, it might be tough for the Nets, but the Nets are going to run. They're going to run. So I don't know if Philly's going to have the speed to keep up with them. The Raptors just don't have enough. Milwaukee, like Sugar said, it has to be proven from Milwaukee. Yeah, they have the best record, but you got to remember something. Now Giannis, if they play the Bucks, Giannis has to deal with KD.
Right.
That's going to take away from his offense, and they don't have enough to deal with James Harden or Kyrie. So as far as the East concerned, Sugar's right. There's no other team that I could see in the East that can compete with them as far as that's concerned. No way.
If they make it, I think it's going to be probably going to be the most exciting team to watch. Yeah, the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah,
I mean they were already exciting with just the 2 guys. I mean, to be honest, they were doing good with Kyrie and Kevin Durant. So to throw James Harden,
but when you add that 3-headed monster, it's going to be ugly.
It's going to be interesting because not to talk about any beefs, but I guess Giannis and Harden had some beef. I don't know if you've caught up with it the last couple of years during the All-Star break and whatnot, and because they picked James Harden last on the All-Star game, and basically were making the joke that when he gets the ball doesn't move. But Coach D, you alluded to when he was in that point guard position, he was top 10 in the league in assists.
Yeah.
So I really can't wait to that Milwaukee Brooklyn playoff matchup, and they got to go against each other because it's going to be very interesting.
But also, a lot of people say that James don't want to pass the ball. James is a willing passer, but what happened was he was in that certain offense that was around him, so he was only doing what the coach wanted him to do. I mean, he's a great passer.
Yeah, he's
a great passer.
So Sugar, talk about that real quick because you averaged almost 15 points a game and 7 assists. So how do you change your approach depending on who you play? Like when do you know when to attack, when to distribute?
Well, as a basketball player, you want to play how you know how to play. You know what I mean? And as a point guard, my job was to get everybody else involved because I had the ball. So I could get off at any time as I would want to. But I was so focused on getting everybody into the game, it just came to me, natural.
And Coach, for you, Coach D, you work with a lot of different teams, and you work with the young guys, right? The young kids and adults and whatnot. So how do you approach, like if you were the coach of this team, how would you approach talking to the players, and what are some of the things that you might do with some of the younger people when you kind of talk to them about shifting their mindset on the offensive side?
Like we said in the beginning, I would say we have to all sacrifice. Each one of those guys can be the man on any team. But if you decided to play together, we all have to buy in collectively to get this chip. And I think that will be my first thing as a coach telling them. And then, don't forget, you got Joe Harris. He won the 3-point shootout two years ago. So I don't know if you've seen one of the games where KD passed it to Joe Harris and he passed it back. KD ran down the court, said, "Shoot it, shoot it." So what I'm saying is they have to all buy in, and collectively they have to do it together. And I think once, like I said, in a 7-game series is about adjustments. I think in a series they will be able to adjust together and get some wins.
Yeah, with the Brooklyn Nets, they are going to be a lot of matchup problems night in and night out. Because I mean, there is not a guy who can match up with KD. You know what I mean? And then you throw Kyrie in there. I mean, who can stop Kyrie? You know what I mean? And then you throw James in there, who done led the NBA 2 years in a row in scoring. Well, that's a lot of power. That's a lot of firepower.
I would say for me, for the last question or last point on this, and then we can move on to some other casual stuff. But I saw a lot of people making issue out of how James Harden left in terms of basically, in front of the media saying that the team was so good and whatnot. And usually in the past, I've given a hard time to players who have left their teams, like LeBron and Kevin Durant when he went to Golden State. But I think this was a little bit different because I think, I believe James has been on the team for like 10 years, right? And he gave Houston his best years, and he really carried so many different iterations of that team. At one point, he had Ariza. At one time, he had like Chandler Parsons. He had Dwight Howard. Then he had all these other big men. And regardless of who he had on the team, he's going at least to the second round of the Western Conference, right, which is a deep conference. So for me, I gave him a pass in that regard because I think he came to the realization that he wanted out. So what do you guys like? Would you guys agree with that assessment?
I mean, as a basketball player, I don't think that you talk bad about your teammates in the press. You know what I mean? If you got something to say, especially with your teammates who have been with you for the last 10 years,
right?
You just don't throw them under the bus. But I'm sure that there's two sides to that story. You know what I mean? And so I guess he was at a point where he just wanted out.
Right.
Right. And I to touch on what Sugar said, I agree with that. And as a basketball coach, coaching around a lot, no matter what happens, you have to portray a unified front. You have to, no matter what. Like I said, remember what, they said Shaq and Kobe didn't hang out, but when they go on that basketball court, they did what they had to do. See, that's another thing. You don't have to hang out with the guys. You just got to, once you go between those lines, you're one team.
Yeah.
Collectively, you have to do that. And you have to have a unified front no matter what. So I agree with Sugar on that note. Sometimes it's frustrating. Sometimes emotions can get the best of us. And we might say things that, we might not mean at the time. But I agree with that. You don't once you're on the team, you don't really say nothing about the trade. They always say don't go to the media because the media craves for that. They crave for that. Anything, you get a story.
What they want to do is that they're just looking to write a story.
Right.
They're looking to write a story.
Right.
So I guess then we'll move on just to some casual topics. Sugar, obviously I like asking these questions to people who've played in the league. And I mentioned, like, for example, my favorite teams are the Chicago Bulls because I'm from Chicago, and then the San Antonio Spurs. So from the new school, say, let's say like 1999 or the year 2000 and afterwards, who are some of your favorite players?
My favorite player was Kobe Bryant. He had the game like old school game. You know what I mean? And every night, he brought it every night. He didn't care who he was, none of that. He brought it every night. But see, I played against Kobe's dad.
Jelly Bean, right?
Yeah. And Kobe, he was a hell of a player. He was a hell of a player because he could do it all. He could do it all.
Give me a couple more players, if you don't mind, just while I have you here.
I would say Kobe, Shaq. He was one of a kind because once you got the ball down there was nothing that you could do.
The Diesel.
Yeah, Diesel, and then you had you got LeBron James. I mean, come on. He's still just after 16 years, he's still just just playing the game on knowledge.
Wow.
You know, just playing the game on knowledge.
Wow. Coach D, any questions from your side?
I will tell you my favorite players. I agree with Sugar as far as Kobe's concerned. I think, I mean, we could debate with that's another topic, but I think Kobe's the closest thing to Mike. And then LeBron's after that. That's my opinion. But another one of my favorite players is Chris Paul, because he's a leader on the court, he's a leader off the court, and
he's a great player. He's a great player.
Great player. And
player.
You know, for any kids that's watching, mirror Chris Paul, because he knows, you know, he puts people in a position to win, and he makes his teammates better. And that's really what you want out of a player, especially a point guard.
Yeah, what's crazy about
you know what you know, I sit and I always listen to, you know, guys who talk about who was better, who was the greatest. You got Kobe, you got MJ, you got Shaq. But for me, the greatest of all time is Bill Russell. You know, people never speak about Bill Russell. Bill Russell was one of a kind.
11 rings.
He got 11 rings. He's one of the greatest of all time.
You know,
score, run the floor, block shots, play defense. For me, he was the best player.
Do you guys know who Bill Russell's favorite player is?
No.
Tim Duncan.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He said it in one of his interviews that his favorite player is Tim Duncan.
Yeah.
Let me touch on one of the greatest of all time, because people don't realize this. I had an argument to say that Magic Johnson was the greatest of all time. Let me tell you why.
He was one.
Magic Johnson could play all 5 positions. Remember that, Sugar? And what was that? When he was rookie year?
Yeah.
Started out at center because Kareem got hurt.
Yeah.
And ended the game as point guard.
Yeah.
There's not too many players in the league that can play all 5 positions.
No.
And Magic can do that.
Oh yeah. I mean, you know what? There's a lot of great players like George Gervin.
Ooh.
You know, I mean, everybody never talks about George. When I tell you he can put the ball in the basket, put it in the basket with ease. He can put the ball in the basket with ease.
Sugar, what advice do you have for the young guys growing up playing ball now? So Coach D obviously does training camps with a lot of the youth. That's where we met, and I was fascinated by his energy that he was bringing. And then I'm going to start my return to coaching this week. I haven't coached in like 15 years, but I love the game so much. I want to just stay involved at whatever level I can. So what advice would you give to the young kids out there?
You know what? What I do is, because during the summers I do a lot of camps, and as soon as these kids walk on the floor, the first thing they do is they run to the 3-point line. That's not your shot. You know what I mean? You got to start inside out. And I think that the 3-point shot has really hurt the young basketball, because all these kids think that they can shoot threes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, the closest person to the basket is the easiest shot, if you ask me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, guys, I'll be telling these kids, why would you want to come out here and shoot a 3 and you can't even shoot a 2? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think what a lot of these here coaches have to do is that they have to teach these kids early on with the fundamentals. Then once you get the fundamentals, then all the other stuff is extra.
Mm-hmm. Just to touch on that, I agree with that. As far as what you want to tell the children or the people coming up, whenever someone goes to a tryout, you ever see that they go out of their norm. Mm-hmm. I tell people, when you go to a tryout, do what you do best.
Mm-hmm.
Make the coach say, I want him on the team because he can do this.
Yeah.
And that's why collectively you can do it. If you're a good rebounder, get 20 rebounds in that tryout. If you could go to the Baja and go to the basket, do that in that tryout. Because when a coach is looking for a team, he's looking for something, that nucleus to make the team together. So Sugar's right. Whenever I'm training, sometimes the first kid that shoots a 3 that don't have to, he's sitting right next to me. And I'll explain it to him, saying, you know, you don't shoot 3s. You just settled. The defense wanted you to do that. So Sugar, that 3-point line is really kind of detrimental to some of the youth coming up today. Sugar, you're right about that.
Yeah, but look at Dennis Rodman.
Mm-hmm.
Before the game, he wouldn't even shoot. He just ride a bike because he wasn't gonna get no shots. but he was getting 10 or 15 rebounds a game. if you're gonna win a championship, you have to have a guy like him to just gonna make that sacrifice, knowing I'm not gonna get a shot, but I'm gonna get every rebound, and that's what he did. That's why he was so great.
I always tell undersized guys who play like the big man role. So I went to watch an AAU game practice the other day over here, and there was one kid on the team, like 6'4", 6'5", muscular, like 16 years old. And when he put his mind to it and he would get in the post, he had a couple moves. A lot of these young guys too, they don't really have any post moves. This kid had a couple moves.
Right.
And because of just a few moves, he was getting easy 2 points. But what happened now, he got confident. Then he wanted the ball at half court. He tried to cross over, try to shoot threes, and was not working. And I asked the coach, coach, like, talk to me, like, what's going on? He goes, you know what? If we're really hard on these guys, he says they won't come back. He says it's a new generation, and they won't come back.
Yeah. And he's a rapper. He's right. It's a totally different generation.
And I tell these kids, like, especially if they're undersized and you're going against someone in a real game who's bigger than you, like Dennis Rodman, he was athletic. He was an athlete, but his heart, he had heart.
Right.
You see him go
He
against
was a hard
Shaq,
worker.
man, he would 6'8", maybe 6'9".
You know what? His whole thing was he was going to outwork you. You weren't going to outwork him. He going to outwork you. That's why he was so successful.
But you can't also be afraid to take a few shots. These guys, you got to take a few shots right to the chops. And Dennis would put his body on the line to make the difference, right? And that's the difference now, where you have even big and strong guys, but they don't want to take charges. They don't want to play like straight up D. I think we can talk about this all day. But Coach D, I know you also, last time we spoke, it's been a while. You had your new deal with New Balance. So what else is going on with you?
Well, I partnered up with iSlides.
Okay.
And they're sponsoring me now, and I have these slides online right now, which is going very well with my logo from Rucker Park. So iSlides is very, very good to me, and they're really, really got my slides going pretty well. These are them right here.
Nice.
The fur and everything, got the name on them. Sugar, I'm gonna send you a pair.
You okay?
I'm gonna send you a pair. But just to touch back on what we said about these kids nowadays, like you said, taking a charge, doing things like that. Those are the teams that win, because that's contagious. That's contagious. When you see your best player taking a charge, you're like, wow, if he could get knocked down, so can I. Because your best player is not supposed to go on the floor. And I think that's where we lost with the back in the days guys did now. Now, and again, no one wants to get hurt anymore, but the grind and the grit, it's where.
Yeah, but it's all, you know what? One thing about a basketball team, and if you're gonna win, well, you gotta have each guy doing his own job. You can't have a guy trying to do everybody's job. Everybody gotta have his own. And then you put it all together, because you can't have a guy there, everybody that wants to shoot, or don't nobody want to rebound, nobody want to play defense. You ain't gonna win. You gotta have everybody gotta have his own role. That's how you win.
He's right.
Sugar, I'll give you the last word before we end this. Any last word you want to share with us and the viewers?
I mean, if you want to get to the next level, you got to put in the work, because basketball is work. You know what I mean? You can have talent, but you still have to work.
I want to thank you, Mr. Richardson, former NBA All-Star, game changer, and obviously my co-host, Coach D. Thank you guys for making the time today. Sugar, I really want to have you back. I love the old school players and the old.
It's my pleasure, man. Anytime.
No, thank you. We just got a comment. Someone said, "Great show." Thank you, Albert. Thank you for attending. And then, Sugar, if you don't mind, and Coach, just stay on. I'm gonna go to we have a sponsor for the show today, so I'm just gonna play that clip real quick. Well, you guys go ahead and just stay here, so when we end the show, we can just wrap it up privately. So the show today, ladies and gentlemen, was brought to you by DLP Academy, and we have a variety of different courses on DLP Academy that empower you to become, to change your life. So we have a variety of entrepreneurship courses. Whether you're a young person who wants to learn entrepreneurship, or you're someone who's older and you want to learn the ins and outs of entrepreneurship, or you're a mom and you want to start a side hustle, we have a variety of recorded and live classes with very special instructors who have MBAs and masters in finance, etc. So we're going to play a quick clip from them, and then we thank you again for attending, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.